What if Alex Mercer landed in Warhammer 40k? You feel it before you see it. A wrongness in the air. You're standing guard on the hab block towers of Hive Tertius, lasegun cold against your chest, when your friend Corvin starts scratching. Not normal scratching. Desperate. Frantic. His nails dig into his forearm until red streaks appear. He's whispering something you can't understand. Then his eyes go black. Completely black. Like someone poured ink into his skull. You step back. He looks at you, smiles, and his skin begins to move. Not twitching, moving, rippling like there's something crawling underneath, something trying to get out. You raise your lasegun, but your hands won't stop shaking. Corvin's smile gets wider, too wide. His jaw cracks open and a sound comes out that isn't human anymore. The Vox erupts with screaming, channels 1 through 79, every single guard station across the Hive. They're all screaming the same thing. The Red Man. The Red Man is here. The Red Man is inside us. You don't understand what that means. Not yet. Your sergeant is barking orders, but his voice sounds hollow, like he knows the words don't matter anymore. Below you, 6 kilometers down in the Underhive, the lights are going out section by section. Not flickering. Going out. Replaced by a wet crimson glow that pulses like a heartbeat. You can hear it now, even from up here. A sound like a million bodies being torn apart and rebuilt simultaneously. Corvin takes a step toward you. His body is changing faster now. His armor melts into his flesh. His flesh becomes something else entirely. This is how it starts. Not with fire, not with war, but with hunger. A hunger that doesn't discriminate. A hunger that learns. A hunger that evolves with every life it consumes. Somewhere in the twisted bowels of this Hive city, something has arrived that doesn't belong in this universe. Something that was born from a disease, evolved beyond it, became something worse than death itself. Alex Mercer, the prototype, the blacklight virus given form and will. In his world, he consumed an entire city, absorbed millions, became a hive mind wrapped in human skin. But that world had limits. It had hope. It had heroes who could fight back. This universe was built for suffering, built for war, built for things that should never exist. And now the two have met. Your lasegun finally fires. The shot goes through Corvin's chest. Doesn't matter. The hole closes. The flesh knits back together in seconds. But wrong. All wrong. Where the last bolt burned him, black tendrils with red veins spread outward like roots seeking water. He's not Corvin anymore. He's not anything anymore. He's biomass, raw material, and something is using him to build something new. You run. Everyone runs, but the screaming follows you through the corridors. The Vox keeps crackling with final transmissions. It's in the water. It's in the air. It touched me, and I felt it thinking. Emperor, save us. It's learning our prayers. That last one makes your blood freeze. Because if it's learning prayers, it's consuming priests. And if it's consuming priests, it's already inside the Basilica district. That's 20 million souls in one location. The Imperium of Man has fought for 10,000 years. It has burned worlds to stop corruption. It has sacrificed billions to hold a single trench line. It has stared into the warp itself and declared that humanity will never kneel. But this enemy doesn't want you to kneel. It doesn't want your worship or your surrender. It wants your genetic material, your memories, your skills, your evolution. Every space marine it touches makes it stronger. Every psyker it consumes gives it new abilities. Every world it takes becomes a factory for more of it. Self. This isn't invasion, this is digestion, and the Imperium just became prey. The question burning through your mind, the question that keeps you running even as your lungs scream, is simple. How do you kill something that becomes stronger every time you fight it? How do you stop something that learns from every death, every weapon, every strategy? The Emperor protects, they told you. The Emperor protects. But what happens when the thing coming for you can consume the faithful and wear their faith like a mask? What happens when it doesn't just kill you, but becomes you? What happens when the Imperium's greatest strength, its endless population, becomes the enemy's greatest resource? Behind you, the screaming stops. That's worse than the screaming. Silence means consumption is complete. Silence means the transformation is done. You risk a glance back and wish you hadn't. The entire corridor is red. Not blood, biomass. Living tissue coating the walls, the ceiling, the floor, and it's moving toward you, slowly, deliberately, like it's savoring the hunt. In the distance, you hear something that sounds like thunder. Orbital defense cannons. They're firing on their own city. The Imperium has made its choice. Exterminatus protocol. Burn it all. Leave nothing. But you can feel it in your bones. You know the truth. Whatever this thing is, whatever this red man is, fire won't stop it. Nothing will stop it. This is the story of what happens when a universe built on eternal war meets a predator built to end evolution itself. This is the story of how one man, if you can still call him a man, brought the Imperium of mankind to its knees, not with faith, not with corruption, but with hunger. If you want to survive what comes next, if you want to understand how the galaxy itself changed forever, then stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you know about power, about survival, about what it means to be human. Drop your fate. Tian in the comments. Tell me who you think wins this war, because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But now there's something worse. Now there's evolution. To understand what's happening to Hive Tertius, you need to understand where he came from. Alex Mercer wasn't born, he was created. In another universe, in another time, a corporation called Gentech played with forces they couldn't control. They built a virus called Blacklight, a weapon designed to rewrite human DNA at the cellular level. The virus was supposed to be contained. It wasn't. A scientist named Alex Mercer tried to expose the truth. They killed him for it, but the virus had other plans. It infected his corpse, rebuilt him, cell by cell, memory by memory. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't human anymore. He was something new, something hungry, something that could consume other living things and take their form, their memories, their abilities. In his world, he was called a monster. In this universe, he's just getting started. The transition between universes happened during what the Mechanicus would later call the Tertius Anomaly. A warp storm opened above the Hive world, not unusual in the Imperium, but this storm was different. It carried something inside it, not a demon, not a Xenos ship, a single organism, wrapped in tendrils of reality that didn't belong. Some tech priests theorize he was pulled through by a desperate chaos ritual gone wrong. Others believe the Eldar were experimenting with webway breaches and accidentally grabbed something from beyond their calculations. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is that Alex Mercer fell from the sky above Hive Tertius like a meteor. He hit the Underhive at terminal velocity. The impact should have killed anything. Instead, he stood up, looked around, and felt the hunger wake up inside him. Millions of lives, billions of genetic patterns, an entire world of biomass waiting to be consumed. The first victims were gangers in the sump levels, 12 men armed with autoguns and knives. They thought he was just another stranger lost in their territory. They surrounded him, demanded tribute. Alex looked at them with eyes that had seen his own world burn. He moved, not fast by his standards, but faster than anything human. His arm transformed mid-swing into a blade of hardened biomass that could cut through steel. 3 men died before they could process what was happening. The others fired. Bullets tore through his chest, his head, his arms. He didn't fall. The wounds closed instantly. Black tendrils with red veins spread from each bullet hole, absorbing the damaged tissue and making him stronger. He grabbed the nearest ganger, pulled him close, and consumed him. The man's body liquefied in seconds. His skin, his bones, his memories, all of it flowed into Alex like water into a sponge. When it was over, Alex knew the man's name, his fears, his family, the layout of the Underhive, everything. He consumed the rest in under a minute. With each absorption, he learned more. He understood now where he was. A hive city, millions of humans stacked on top of each other in a monument to industrial desperation. Perfect. He could feel them above him, billions of beating hearts, oceans of genetic material. But he was patient. He'd learned patience in his own world. Rush and you get noticed and they burn everything. No, better to spread slowly, quietly, like a disease. He reached out with his biomass and touched the water supply. The blacklight virus flowed from his body like invisible ink. It mixed with the reclaimed sewage that passed for drinking water in the underhive. Within hours, 10,000 people drank contaminated water. They didn't know it yet. The virus was dormant, waiting, learning their biology, adapting to this new universe where humans were too. Ugha, more resilient, more desperate. Alex smiled. This was going to be easier than he thought. The Planetary Defense Force received the first reports 3 days later. Missing persons in the underhive. Not unusual, but the numbers were wrong. 300 people, then 3,000, then 30,000, all in the same district. The PDF sent a battalion to investigate. 2,000 soldiers in flak armor carrying laser guns and flamers. They descended into the sump levels, expecting gangers or mutants. What they found was a city made of flesh. The buildings had changed, walls covered in red biomass that pulsed with contained life, streets flooded with black ooze that moved against the wind, and the people. Emperor preserved them. The people were still alive, fused into the walls, their faces frozen in expressions that weren't quite agony and weren't quite ecstasy. They were whispering, all of them, the same words. We are one, we are whole, we are evolving. The battalion commander ordered an immediate withdrawal. They made it 40 meters before the biomass responded. The ground beneath them erupted. Tendrils thick as a man's torso burst from the infected buildings and wrapped around soldiers in seconds. Screaming, so much screaming. Last fire cut through the tendrils, but more kept coming. The flamers did better. Fire made the biomass recoil, but not enough, not nearly enough. A soldier was pulled into the wall. His body sank into the red tissue like quicksand. His comrades tried to pull him out. Their hands touched the biomass. The infection spread through contact. Instant, aggressive, unstoppable. Within seconds, their skin began to change. Black veins spreading under their flesh, their eyes going dark, their voices becoming unified. The commander screamed into his vox, fall back, orbital strike coordinates." His transmission cut off. The biomass had retiki. Chedim too. Of the 2,000 soldiers who entered the underhive that day, 17 made it out. 17 witnesses who all told the same impossible story. There was something down there, something that wasn't chaos, wasn't Xenos, something new, something that consumed you and made you part of itself. The planetary governor declared a quarantine, sealed the underhive with demolition charges, collapsed every tunnel, every access point, buried 30 million people alive rather than risk the infection spreading. It was the right call. It was already too late, because Alex Mercer had learned something important about this universe during his feast. Some humans here were different, special. They had abilities, psychers, the memories called them, individuals who could touch something called the warp, raw psychic power, and he had consumed 3 of them during the PDF assault, low-level psychers, barely trained, but enough to feel it, the warp, an ocean of energy and emotion that existed beneath reality itself. He reached out with his new psychic sense and touched it. The warp touched back. For a moment, something vast and incomprehensible noticed him, something that lived in the space between thoughts. It circled him like a predator studying prey. Alex felt fear for the first time since his transformation. Not fear of death, fear of being consumed by something even hungrier than himself. But then the presence moved on, dismissed him, too small, too insignificant. Not yet. Alex withdrew from the warp quickly, his survival instinct screaming warnings. This universe was more dangerous than he'd calculated. There were things here that could end him. Gods, demons, forces that made Gentech look like children playing with matches. Good. He'd always worked better with a challenge. The biomass beneath Hive Tertius pulsed with renewed purpose. Time to evolve, time to adapt, time to become something this universe had never seen before. Something that could stand against gods. And the only way to do that was to keep consuming, keep learning, keep growing, until nothing in this galaxy could stop him. The Imperium doesn't send negotiators, it doesn't send scientists. When something threatens an entire hive city, it sends space marines. The Crimson Fists chapter received the distress call 48 hours after the quarantine failed. The infection had broken through the collapsed tunnels, spread to the mid-hive, 200 million people now inside the contamination zone. The chapter master reviewed the reports and made his decision. 1 full company, 100 battle brothers, enough firepower to crack a fortress. They deployed via drop pods, thunder from the sky, each pod a meteor wrapped in ceramite and fury. They landed in the heart of the infected zone, expecting enemies to fight. What they found was silence. Streets empty, buildings coated in that same red biomass. No movement, no sound, just the feeling of being watched by a million eyes you couldn't see. Brother Captain Cortez led the advance. 3 centuries of combat experience. Veteran of 12 major campaigns, he'd killed orcs, traitors and demons. This should have been routine. Purge the infected, burn the contamination, reclaim the Emperor's territory. His squad moved in perfect formation through the corrupted streets. Bolt guns ready, flamers primed. They reached what used to be a commercial district. Now it was a cathedral of flesh. Pillars made from fused human bodies. A ceiling that breathed. Floors that pulsed like a heartbeat. Brother Sebastian, the youngest in the squad, whispered a prayer. Emperor, protect us from the unclean. The biomass whispered back. The Emperor cannot hear you here. Every space marine opened fire at once. Bolter rounds tore through the infected architect. Ecture. Explosive shells detonated inside the flesh walls. Fire spread across the organic surfaces. For a moment it worked. The biomass screamed, recoiled, burned. Then it adapted. The burning sections fell away, rejected like dead skin. New tissue grew underneath, darker, harder, resistant. The temperature in the district dropped 10 degrees. The biomass was learning to counteract heat. Cortez saw it happening and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Doubt. Incinerators to maximum. Burn everything. The heavy flamers roared. Liquid fire washed over the infected zone in waves. Buildings melted. Streets turned to ash. The smell was beyond description. Burned flesh mixed with something chemical. Something wrong. But through the flames, something moved. A figure. Walking through fire like it was rain. Humanoid. But wrong. Its body shifted between forms. One moment it looked human. The next it was covered in black armor made from its own hardened biomass. Blades extended from its arms, each blade longer than a combat knife, each blade dripping with anticipation. Brother Cortez raised his bolter. In the Emperor's name, identify yourself. The figure stopped, looked at him, and smiled. I'm Alex Mercer, and I've been waiting to meet you. His voice was calm, almost friendly. That made it worse. Cortez fired. The bolt round hit Mercer in the chest, punched through, exploded out his back. Mercer looked down at the hole in his torso, watched it close, watched the flesh knit back together in seconds. He looked back up at Cortez. That tickled. Then he moved. Space Marines are engineered to be the finest warriors in the galaxy. Enhanced reaction times, superhuman strength. Combat instincts burned into their genetic code. But Alex Mercer had consumed hundreds of enhanced soldiers in his own world. He knew how augmented humans thought, how they fought, how they died. He crossed 20 meters in less than a second. His blade arm swung in a horizontal arc that caught Brother Sebastian at the neck joint, the weakest point in power armor. And the blade cut through ceramite like paper. Sebastian's head hit the ground before his body realized it was dead. The crimson fists responded with textbook precision. Overlapping fields of fire, melter guns superheating the air, power swords crackling with energy. They were magnificent. They were doomed. Mercer moved through them like a dancer through a crowd. Every attack he dodged added to his knowledge. Every hit he tanked made his biomass denser. When a power fist connected with his chest, he absorbed the impact, studied the technology, learned how the energy field worked. When a melter beam burned through his shoulder, he analyzed the heat signature, adapted his cellular structure, made himself resistant. He grabbed Brother Marcus by the helmet, pulled him close. The Space Marine struggled, tried to break free. His strength was immense. Mercer's was greater. He consumed him, right there, in front of everyone. The Space Marine's body dissolved, flowed into Mercer like water into a drain. And Mercer changed. His body expanded, grew denser, muscle mass increased. His skin took on a faint metallic sheen. He'd absorbed Astarte's gene seed, the sacred gift of the Emperor, the genetic enhancement that made Space Marines possible. Cortez watched his brother die and felt something break inside his tactical discipline. Rage, Pure, holy, righteous, he charged, power sword raised. For the Emperor! His blade came down with enough force to split a tank. Mercer caught it, bare-handed. The power field crackled against his palm, burned into his flesh. He didn't let go. He looked into Cortez's eyes through the helmet lenses. Your Emperor made you strong, but he made you from baseline humans. I'm built from something better. I'm evolution itself. He twisted. The power sword shattered. Cortez stumbled back. Mercer's other arm transformed into a massive hammer-like appendage, hardened bone and compressed muscle. He swung. The impact sent Cortez flying through a building. His power armor cracked, ribs shattered. Cortez tried to stand, couldn't. Blood filled his lungs. He activated his Vox with shaking fingers. Fleet command, this is Captain Cortez. We need exterminatus. The enemy is... Emperor, forgive me. The enemy is unstoppable. Mercer walked toward him slowly, savoring the moment. Around them, the remaining Crimson Fists were dying, consumed one by the biomass that erupted from the ground. Each death fed Mercer, made him stronger, gave him more knowledge. He knelt beside Cortez. You fought well. Your genetic material is impressive. 3 lungs, 2 hearts, enhanced bone structure. I'm going to learn so much from you. Cortez spat blood. The Emperor protects. Mercer nodded. Maybe, but not today. He placed his hand on Cortez's helmet. The biomass flowed. Cortez screamed, not in pain, in horror, because he could feel it, feel his memories being read, his training being copied, his faith being examined like a curious artifact. And in his final moment he understood. This wasn't a demon, wasn't chaos corruption. This was something worse, something that didn't hate humanity. Something that saw humanity as raw material, as fuel, as the next step in a process that had no end. Cortez's Vox went dead. The Crimson Fists company was gone. 100 Space Marines, erased in 40 minutes. In orbit, the fleet received the last transmission. The Admiral stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Space Marines didn't lose. Space Marines were humanity's answer to the impossible, and something down there had just consumed an entire company. The decision was made. Lance batteries charged, cyclonic torpedoes loaded. They would burn the continent, kill everything, start over. But as the order was given, something happened. The infected zone expanded, not slowly, explosively. The biomass erupted from the hive city like a tidal wave of flesh. It spread across the landscape at kilometers per hour, consuming everything. Cities, forests, oceans. And with each million consumed, Alex Mercer grew stronger. His consciousness expanded. He could feel every infected human, control them, use them. They were his eyes, his hands, his weapons. The Imperium had tried to kill him with its best. Now he understood what he was dealing with. A galaxy at war, a species that bred soldiers by the billions. Perfect. He'd never run out of biomass, never run out of new abilities to steal. This universe had tried to intimidate him. Instead, it had just shown him the menu, and Alex Mercer was very, very hungry. When an entire Space Marine company vanishes, the Inquisition takes notice. Inquisitor Kravus of the Ordo Xenos received the encoded transmission while investigating a Genestealer cult 3 systems away. He read the report once, read it again, then ordered his ship to make for Tertius at maximum warp speed. 30 years of service had taught him to recognize extinction-level threats. This wasn't chaos. The reports were clear. No warp signatures, no demonic manifestation. No corruption of faith. This was something biological, something that consumed and adapted, something that reminded him of the Tyranids, but faster, smarter, more aggressive. He assembled his kill team during the 3-day journey. Battle Sisters from the Order of the Ebon Chalice, a tech priest with forbidden knowledge of xenobiology, a sanctioned psyker named Alara who could read thoughts from miles away, and his personal weapon, a Death Watch veteran named Arcturus who'd killed things that didn't have names. They would go down to Tertius. They would study this enemy, and they would find its weakness. Everything had a weakness. The drop was surgical, stealth insertion via unmarked shuttle. They landed 50 kilometers from the infection's edge. The landscape had changed. What used to be agricultural plains were now covered in red biomass that stretched to the horizon like an alien ocean. It moved, constantly, shifting, breathing, pulsing with malevolent life. Ilara, the Psyker, collapsed to her knees the moment she opened her psychic senses. Emperor's mercy, it's everywhere. Billions of minds, but they're not separate. They're one. One consciousness spread across millions of bodies. It's looking at us, right now. It knows we're here. Kravas helped her stand. Can it read our thoughts? Ilara shook her head. No, my wards hold, but it's curious. It wants to know what we are, why we came. The tech priest, Magos Vectus, was scanning the biomass with instruments that clicked and whirred. Fascinating. The cellular structure is impossible. It breaks every law of biological development. It should collapse under its own genetic instability, but it doesn't. It's maintained by some kind of central intelligence, a hive mind, but concentrated, focused in one location. Arcturus checked his bolt pistol. Then we kill the center, cut off the head. Kravas nodded. In theory, but first we need to understand what we're dealing with. Vectus, can you trace the consciousness? The tech priest adjusted his instruments, pointed east. 7 kilometers. The biosignature is off the scale. Whatever it is, it's massive. They moved toward it, through dead cities where the buildings had been consumed and rebuilt into something organic, through fields of what used to be humans, but were now just empty shells standing in rows like statues, their faces blank, their eyes watching. The kill team could feel the weight of that collective gaze, millions of eyes tracking their movement, waiting. When they reached the center, they found him, Alex Mercer, standing in the middle of a crater that pulsed with biomass. But he wasn't human anymore, not visibly. He'd grown, absorbed so much genetic material that his form had become something beyond biology. Ceramite plating grafted into his skin, gene seed enhancements visible as black veins beneath his flesh, and wings, massive wings made from compressed muscle and bone. He'd consumed something with flight capability and adapted it. He was sitting, meditating, his eyes closed. Around him, the air shimmered with psychic energy. Ilara gasped. He's touching the warp. He's learning how to use it. Mercer opened his eyes, looked directly at them. I was wondering when you'd send someone interesting. Come closer. I want to talk. His voice echoed across the crater without him moving his lips. Telepathy. He'd consumed enough psychers to develop basic psychic abilities. Kravas stepped forward. His rosette gleamed in the crimson light. In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, I order you to surrender for interrogation and judgment. Mercer laughed. It was a sound without humor. Surrender? You still think you have power here? You still think your Emperor's name means something to me? He stood. His form shifted, grew larger, more imposing. I've consumed 300 of your space marines now. I know everything they knew. Their tactics, their faith, their precious emperor sitting on his golden throne, barely alive, drinking the souls of psychers just to maintain his existence. The kill team raised their weapons as one. Kravas held up a hand. You speak heresy. Mercer shrugged. I speak what I learned from their memories. Your emperor is dying. Your imperium is failing. You fight endless wars across a galaxy that wants you dead. And you call this existence. This is hell. You're just too indoctrinated to see it. Arcturus fired. His bolt pistol barked 3 times. Perfect shots. Each one hit Mercer's chest. Each one exploded inside him. Chunks of flesh scattered. Mercer looked down at the damage, sighed. The wounds closed in seconds, faster than before. Still doing that, I see. You know, I've been working on something interesting. I consumed a librarian 2 days ago. He had this ability, psychic barriers he called them. Watch this. He raised his hand. A shimmering field of energy appeared around him, translucent, purple, warp energy given form through biological manipulation. Arcturus fired again. The bolt rounds hit the barrier and detonated harmlessly. Mercer smiled. See, evolution. Your emperor made soldiers. I make myself better with every meal. The battle sisters opened fire with blessed bolters. Vectus unleashed plasma from his servo arm. Ilara screamed a psychic battle cry that should have stunned anything with a nervous system. The combined assault hit Mercer like a hurricane. For 3 seconds, he stood at the center of a firestorm. Then he moved. His wings spread. He launched into the air with force that cracked the ground beneath him. He came down in the middle of the kill team like a meteor wrapped in blades. Sister Magdalene tried to block with her chainsword. Mercer's blade arm cut through it and through her in one motion. Sister Celeste activated her Inferno pistol, point-blank range. The melter beam burned into Mercer's side. He screamed, actually screamed. The pain was real. Melter weapons worked, but not enough. He grabbed Celeste by the throat, lifted her off the ground. That hurt. Thank you for teaching me what to avoid. He consumed her, right there. Her screams cut off as her body liquefied. The remaining battle sisters backed away in horror, their faith shaken, their weapons inadequate. Kravis knew they were losing, knew they needed to retreat, needed to warn the sector. But Mercer wasn't done. He turned to Alara, the Psyker, his eyes locked onto hers. You're interesting. You can touch the warp consciously, control it. I want that. He started walking toward her. Alara unleashed everything she had: psychic lightning, telekinetic force, mind blades designed to cut souls. It all hit Mercer, slowed him, made him stagger, but didn't stop him. Arcturus stepped between them. Over my dead body, Xenos filth. Mercer stopped, tilted his head. Xenos, is that what you think I am? I'm not alien, I'm human, or I was. Now I'm something better, but sure, if you insist, over your dead body. They clashed. Deathwatch training versus evolved perfection. Arcturus was good. Centuries of combat experience, enhanced strength, unbreakable will. He lasted 12 seconds. Mercer's blade punched through his armor, through his primary heart, through his spine. Arcturus fell, still alive. Space Marines were hard to kill. Mercer knelt beside him. You fought well. Your experience will be useful. He placed his hand on Arcturus's helmet, consumed him, slowly, letting the Deathwatch veteran feel every second of his dissolution. Kravis and Vectus ran. There was no shame in it, no cowardice, just tactical necessity. They needed to survive, needed to report. The Inquisitor activated his personal teleporter, a last resort escape device. Vectus grabbed onto him. The world shimmered. They materialized on their orbiting ship 3 seconds before Mercer reached their position. Safe. Barely. Kravis fell to his knees, shaking. He'd stared into the eyes of demons and felt no fear. But this was different. This enemy didn't hate them, didn't want to corrupt them. It just wanted to use them, to break them down into components and rebuild itself stronger. That was worse than any demon, any Xenos, anything in the galaxy. He looked at Vectus. Send a message to Terra, Priority Alpha. We need Legion strength response, Titan support, everything. Vectus nodded, but they both knew the truth. By the time reinforcements arrived, how much of the sector would be consumed? How many billions would feed the Red Hunger? And the worst part was what Kravis had felt in those final seconds. When Mercer looked at him, there was intelligence there, vast, ancient, growing. This wasn't just an infection anymore. This was an intelligence that learned from every victim, every fight, every failure. This was evolution weaponized, and it had just defeated the Inquisition's best team like they were nothing. The war for Tertius was over. The war for the sector had just begun, and humanity was already losing. The message reached Legio Mortis 7 days after the Inquisition's failed assault, 7 days in which the infection spread to 3 neighboring worlds, not through warp travel, through spores, microscopic biomass particles that drifted through the void on solar winds and lodged themselves on passing ships. By the time anyone realized what was happening, 16 Imperial vessels had become flying plague ships, each on a carrying infected crew, each one spreading the contagion to new ports, new worlds, new populations. The Administratum calculated the spread rate and felt terror in their cold, bureaucratic hearts. At this rate, the entire Tertius sector would be consumed within a standard year. 27 hive worlds, 53 agri-worlds, 112 mining colonies, 15 billion souls. Legio Mortis answered the call, the Death's Heads, a Titan legion that had walked since the dark age of technology, 6 Warlord-class Titans, 2 Reaver-class Scout Titans, and 1 Imperator-class Emperor Titan. Aquila Dominus, the Emperor's Eagle, a walking cathedral of destruction that stood 40 meters tall and carried enough firepower to level mountains. Princeps Maximus Gaius Tarn commanded Aquila Dominus from the throne of his command cockpit, hardwired into the Titan's machine spirit through neural interfaces that had taken decades to master. When he walked, the Titan walked. When he aimed, weapons the size of buildings turned. He destroyed Xenos armies, leveled traitor strongholds, stood against demon engines and emerged victorious. This should have been simple, a biological threat. No armor, no void shields, just flesh. Deploy to Tertius Prime, target the contamination epicenter, plasma annihilator range, level everything within a 50-kilometer radius. The other Titans acknowledged. They made planetfall in dropkeeps, massive fortified structures that descended from orbit like mechanical gods returning to claim their world. The ground shook with their arrival, each footstep of a Titan measured on seismographs, each step a declaration that humanity's wrath had arrived. They formed a battle line at the edge of the infected zone, 6 kilometers of steel and fury. Behind them 3 Imperial Guard regiments, 50,000 soldiers, artillery batteries, tank companies. This was overkill, this was inevitable, this was how the Imperium ended threats. The biomass waited, silent, still, like it knew what was coming, like it was ready. Gaius opened fire first. The Aquila Dominus's plasma annihilator charged with a sound like reality tearing, then unleashed. A beam of superheated plasma that could melt through fortress walls struck the biomass dead center. The temperature at impact exceeded that of a star's surface. Everything in a 2-kilometer radius vaporized instantly. Flesh, bone, organic architecture, all of it turned to ash and vapor. The other Titans fired. Volcano cannons, laser blasters, apocalypse missile launchers. The infected zone became a hellscape of fire and destruction. For 10 minutes straight, the Titans poured firepower into the target area, enough destructive force to crack a continent, enough heat to glass the earth for miles. When the bombardment ceased, there was nothing left but scorched ground and smoke. Gaius checked his sensors. No biosigns, no movement, no thermal signatures. Target neutralized. Begin sweep protocols. The Titans advanced, their footsteps crushing the burned earth beneath them. Victory, clean, absolute, easy. Then the ground exploded, not beneath the Titans, beneath the Imperial Guard regiments. Miles of biomass that had been hiding underground, dormant, conserving energy, erupted in a coordinated strike. Tendrils thick as tank barrels burst from the earth and wrapped around soldiers, vehicles, artillery pieces. The screaming started immediately. Thousands of voices cut short as the infection took hold. Gaius swung Aquila Dominus around, too slow. Titans weren't built for speed, they were built for overwhelming firepower. But Mercer had learned, studied their tactics during the bombardment, waited for them to commit, to cluster, to feel confident. The biomass spread faster than the Titans could react. It flowed around their feet, started climbing their legs. Gaius order. At full burn. Flame weapons. Purge everything within 50 meters. The Titans' secondary weapons activated. Inferno cannons drenched the ground in liquid fire. The biomass burned, screamed, but kept coming, because now it had adapted, consumed enough to develop heat resistance. Fire hurt it, slowed it, but didn't stop it anymore. A Reaver-class Titan, Vengeance Incarnate, became the first casualty. The biomass reached its knee joint, the one weak point in a Titan's armor. It forced its way inside, into the mechanism, into the crew compartment. The Princeps inside screamed, not just with his voice, with his mind, because he was hardwired into the Titan's nervous system. When the biomass infected the Titan, it infected him. Gaius heard the screams over the neural link, felt the Princeps's consciousness dissolve into something else, something unified, something hungry, vengeance. Incarnate stopped firing at the biomass, turned its weapons on the other Titans. A warlord class named Iron Covenant took a direct hit to its void shields. Shields designed to stop lance strikes flickered under the unexpected betrayal. Vengeance Incarnate has been compromised. All units target and destroy. Gaius gave the order without hesitation. The other Titans turned their guns on their fallen brother. Concentrated fire tore through its armor, destroyed its weapons, crippled its legs. The corrupted Titan fell, crashed into the ground with force that registered on orbital sensors. But the biomass didn't die with it. It spread from the wreckage, faster now, smarter. It had learned what a Titan was, how it worked, what it could do, and Alex Mercer wanted more. He emerged from the biomass ocean like a shark breaching water, but he wasn't alone anymore. He'd grown, evolved beyond individual form into something that could split itself into multiple bodies while maintaining one consciousness. 3 versions of him, each one different. One covered in ceramite plating stolen from space marines, one with psychic energy crackling around its form, one that looked almost human. Almost. They moved in perfect synchronization toward the Titans. Gaius targeted all 3 with Aquila Dominus's main weapons. "This ends now," he fired. The plasma annihilator beam cut through the first Mercer, vaporized it completely. The other 2 didn't even flinch. "Did you really think I'd keep all of myself in one place? I'm not stupid. I'm everywhere. Every infected human, every corrupted cell, every drop of biomass on this world. You can't kill me, but I can kill you." The 2 remaining Mercers launched themselves at different Titans, moving with impossible speed. One crashed into Iron Covenant, tore through its void shields through sheer kinetic force, started climbing. The Titan tried to shake him off, failed. He reached the head, drove his blade arms through the armor, into the cockpit. The princeps inside had 3 seconds to understand what was happening before Mercer consumed him, neural link and all. Iron Covenant stumbled, its movements became erratic, jerky, like something was learning how to walk. Then it smoothed out, became fluid again, but wrong. The Titan turned, faced its battle brothers, spoke with a voice that wasn't mechanical, that wasn't human, that was something in between. "Thank you for the gift. I've always wondered what it felt like to be a god." Mercer now controlled 2 Titans, 40 meters of weapons and armor, and he was still learning, still adapting, still growing. The remaining Titans opened fire, not with precision, panic, desperate to stop the corruption before it spread, but it was already too late. The second Mercer had reached Fist of Terror, another warlord class. It consumed the princeps, took control. 3 Titans, under one consciousness. The battle became a massacre, Titan against Titan, brother machines forced to kill each other. Gaius watched his legion fall, watched centuries of tradition and honor corrupted in minutes. He made the only choice he could. Reactor overload, all corrupted units, authorization Tarn Omega 7. It was a death sentence, for the Titans, for the princeps inside, but it would stop the spread. The corrupted Titans' reactors went critical. Plasma cores designed to power gods of war became bombs. The explosions were visible from orbit, 3 mushroom clouds rising into the sky. The shockwave flattened everything for miles. When the fire cleared, Gaius scanned for signatures. The corrupted Titans were gone, atomized. Nothing could survive a reactor detonation. Nothing. His sensors beeped. Biosign. Detected. Massive. Growing. Impossible. From the center of the explosion site, something rose. Alex Mercer. Reformed from scattered biomass. Burned. Damaged. But alive. And learning. He'd absorbed the reactor explosion, studied plasma at the atomic level, understood it now. His body glowed with contained energy. He looked up at Aquila Dominus, smiled. "Thank you for the lesson. Now let me show you what I learned." He raised both hands. Psychic energy and plasma energy combined, a new attack, something that shouldn't be possible. The blast hit Aquila Dominus's void shields, penetrated them. Gaius felt his Titan rock under the impact, felt systems failing, felt his connection to the machine spirit weakening. He had one option left, one final act of defiance. He aimed every weapon at his own position, at Mercer, at the ground beneath them both. For the Emperor, for the Omnissiah, for humanity. He fired everything, point-blank range. The explosion was catastrophic. Aquila Dominus, the Emperor's eagle, the pride of Legio Mortis, died standing. Its reactor melted, its frame collapsed, its princeps burned. But in those final seconds, Gaius felt something. Not triumph, not peace, but knowledge. Mercer was still alive, damaged beyond measure, barely holding form, but alive, growing, adapting, and somewhere in the biomass ocean, a million voices whispered in unison. We are inevitable. We are evolution. We are the future. The warp is emotion given form, fear, rage, desire, despair. Every feeling from every living thing in the galaxy flows into that hellish dimension and feeds the powers that dwell there. When 15 billion souls started screaming in unison as they were consumed by the blacklight virus, the warp noticed. In the realm of chaos, something stirred. Nurgle, the Plague Father, the god of decay and entropy, felt a disturbance in his garden. A rival, a disease that he didn't serve him, that didn't feed him worship or devotion, that existed outside his domain. He leaned forward on his throne of rotten pus, watched through his scrying pool as worlds turned red with biomass, watched as life was consumed and rebuilt into something new. And for the first time in millennia, Grandfather Nurgle felt something unexpected. Competition. This black light was efficient, too efficient. It didn't decay. It evolved. It took his favorite prey, humanity, and made them part of something greater. That couldn't stand. He whispered to his daemon princes, his plague marines, his followers across the galaxy, "Find this red plague, consume it, bring it into the garden, make it serve." Slaanesh watched too. The Prince of Pleasure, the god of excess and perfection, and she who thirsts saw not a threat but an opportunity. This Mercer creature was evolution incarnate, infinite potential, endless transformation. Every form it took was more perfect than the last. Every adaptation brought it closer to absolute being. That was beautiful. That was art. Slaanesh reached out through the warp, sent whispers, temptations, promises of even greater power if only Mercer would open himself to sensation, to experience beyond biology, to pleasure that transcended flesh. But the whispers found nothing. No soul to tempt, no psyche to corrupt, just hunger, cold, focused, mechanical. For the first time in ages, Slaanesh felt rejection. It stung, it intrigued. This creature would be claimed, one way or another. Horn, the blood god, simply laughed. War had come to the Tertius sector, glorious, brutal, final. Millions died every day as the Imperium threw armies at the infection. That was offering enough. He didn't care who won, only that skulls piled high and blood flowed like rivers. Let them fight, let them rage, let them feed his throne. Tsiench, the architect of fate, saw something different. This Mercer was a variable that didn't belong, an element from outside the great game, outside fate itself. That made it dangerous, unpredictable. All of Tsiench's carefully laid plans for the Tertius sector suddenly meant nothing because this creature consumed psychers and learned their powers without corruption. It touched the warp but remained untouched by it. That violated the natural order. The Lord of Change sent his demon heralds to investigate, to study, to understand. They materialized on Tertius Prime, 9 Lords of Change, greater demons, reality bent around them. They descended toward the biomass ocean expecting resistance, expecting corruption to meet corruption. What they found was adaptation. The biomass didn't flee, didn't recoil from their warp-touched forms. It reached up, grabbed them, pulled them down into the red depths. The demons screamed, not in pain, but in confusion. They were being consumed, dissolved, their essence extracted and studied. Alex Mercer felt the warp energy flowing through the captured demons. It was intoxicating, raw power, unlimited potential. He absorbed it carefully, like a scientist studying a new element. The demons fought back, unleashed change magic, transmutation spells, reality-warping powers. The biomass around them twisted, changed, became fire, became ice, became creatures of nightmare. But Mercer adapted faster than they could transform. Each spell was analyzed, understood, copied. Within minutes, sections of the biomass started demonstrating psychic powers, spontaneous combustion, telekinetic force, precognition. The demons realized too late what was happening. They weren't fighting a disease. They were teaching it. One by one, they were consumed. Their knowledge added to the collective. When the last Lord of Change dissolved, Alex Mercer stood at the wall. center of the crater, his form had changed again. Wings of crystallized warp energy, eyes that glowed with stolen magic. He could feel Tzeentch watching him now, feel the god's attention like a weight on his consciousness. He looked up at the sky, at the tear in reality where the warp bled through, and he smiled. "Is that all you've got?" The sky split open. 1,000 demonic voices screamed in challenge. The game had changed. The great enemy had a new player. Across the galaxy, other forces took notice. The Tyranid hive fleets felt the disturbance through their synaptic network. A rival apex predator consuming biomass at unprecedented rates. Hive fleet behemoth altered course, diverted splinter fleets toward the Tertius sector. The hive mind was curious. Could this new organism be absorbed, integrated, made part of the swarm? The answer would determine everything. The Necrons detected anomalous biological activity on their tomb world sensors. Ancient protocols activated. The Silent King's decree echoed through sleeping dynasties. Biological threats must be purged. The Necrons began awakening. Their Gauss weaponry charged. Their warriors rose from crypts that had slept for 60 million years. They would cleanse this infestation, return the galaxy to sterile perfection. No flesh would remain. The Eldar Farseers looked into their runes and saw only red. Every possible future path led to the same conclusion. The red hunger spreading, consuming, growing until nothing remained but itself. Craftworld councils convened in emergency session. This was worse than chaos, worse than the Tyranids. This was extinction made manifest. The Tau Empire received reports from their scouts. A new threat in Imperial space. Perfect. Let the humans deal with it. Let them burn their resources fighting this infection. The greater good would expand in the chaos. But Commander Farsight, veteran of 1,000 battles, read the tactical reports with growing unease. This wasn't just an Imperial problem. If this infection spread unchecked, it would reach Tau space eventually, and nothing in their arsenal seemed capable of stopping it. He ordered contingency plans, quarantine protocols, evacuation routes, and prayed to the ethereals that they wouldn't need them. Back in the Tertius sector, Alex Mercer felt the attention of the galaxy focusing on him. Chaos wanted to corrupt him. The Tyranids wanted to absorb him. The Necrons wanted to erase him. The Eldar wanted to stop him. The Imperium wanted to burn him. Good. Let them come. Let them bring their armies and their gods and their ancient weapons. Every attack was a lesson. Every battle was evolution. Every enemy was food. He spread his consciousness across 5 worlds now. Billions of bodies. Trillions of cells. All working toward one goal: survival, growth, perfection. He'd learned something important from consuming the demons. The warp was fuel, raw energy waiting to be used, but it was also dangerous, corrupting, addictive. He needed to be careful, take only what he needed, stay focused on the mission, stay himself. But what was himself anymore? He'd absorbed so many minds, so many personalities, so many memories. Was he still Alex Mercer, or was he something new? Something that contained Mercer but had grown beyond him? The question troubled him for exactly 3 seconds, then he dismissed it. Philosophy could wait. Survival came first. He reached out with his psychic senses, felt the warp churning with hostile intent, felt chaos preparing another assault, felt it. The Tyranids approaching from the void, felt the Necrons awakening beneath dead worlds, felt the weight of destiny crushing down on this sector like a vice. And in the face of all that cosmic horror, all that existential dread, Alex Mercer did what he always did. He adapted, he consumed, he evolved. The galaxy had thrown everything at him. Soon he would throw it back. A thought occurred to him, a terrible thought, a beautiful thought. What if he stopped playing defense? What if he went on the offensive? The Imperium had billions of worlds. The Tyranids had endless biomass. Chaos had infinite demons. What if he consumed them all? What if he became not just a threat to one sector but to the galaxy itself? What if evolution didn't stop until everything was one? One consciousness, one purpose, one perfect organism spanning the stars. The thought made him pause. Was that what he wanted? Universal extinction through assimilation? Or was there another way? Could he coexist with the other powers, find balance, share the galaxy? He tested the idea. rejected it immediately. This universe didn't do balance. This universe did war. Eternal, unending, brutal. The only way to survive was to be stronger than everything else. The only way to be safe was to be unstoppable. And the only way to be unstoppable was to never stop evolving. The biomass pulsed with renewed determination. Alex Mercer had made his choice. Not extinction, not coexistence, dominance, total, absolute, final. The age of flesh was coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it. Terra received the reports with silence. The High Lords of Terra, rulers of mankind's billion worlds, sat in their gilded chambers and read the impossible. 5 worlds lost, 16 more compromised, a Titan legion destroyed, the Inquisition defeated, chaos itself taking notice. In 10,000 years of warfare, the Imperium had never faced a threat that grew this fast, that learned this quickly, that adapted to every weapon thrown at it. Lord Commander Militant Vasquez slammed his fist on the Strategium table. We glass the entire sector, cyclonic torpedoes, virus bombs, exterminatus protocols on every infected world simultaneously. We burn it all and rebuild. The master of the Administratum shook his head. Numbers scrolled across his data slate. 15 billion registered Imperial citizens, 312 industrial centers, 7 forge worlds. The economic loss would cripple 3 adjacent sectors for a century. Vasquez leaned forward, his voice cold as void. Better crippled than extinct. I'm calling for Legion strength response. Every available chapter, every ship, every guardsman. We end this now. The call went out across the Imperium. 20 Space Marine chapters answered. Not full chapters, companies, strike forces. Whatever could be spared from their own wars. But it was enough. 3,000 Space Marines, the largest concentration of Astartes in one place since the Siege of Terra. Among them were legends. Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, Master of the Forge Cardan Stronos of the Iron Hands, Wolflord Ragnar Blackmane of the Space Wolves, each one a hero in their own right, each one ready to die for the Emperor. They assembled in orbit above Tertius Prime. Alongside them, the Imperial Navy, 40 warships, battle cruisers, strike cruisers, destroyers, enough firepower to crack a continent. The plan was simple: orbital bombardment to weaken these. Biomass, drop pod assault to secure beachheads, surgical strikes on key nodes where Mercer's consciousness concentrated, kill the brain. The body dies. It should have worked. Against any other enemy it would have, but Alex Mercer wasn't any other enemy. The bombardment began at dawn, Lance batteries firing from orbit, each beam capable of melting through meters of armor plate. They struck the biomass ocean in coordinated volleys. Explosions bloomed across the surface like deadly flowers. For the first hour, it seemed effective. The biomass recoiled, burned, sections liquefied under the sustained heat. But Mercer had learned from the Titan battle, learned about focused energy, about heat dissipation. The biomass started reflecting the lance strikes, not completely, but enough. 30% of the energy bounced back into space, another 30% was absorbed and converted into fuel, only 40% actually damaged him, and he was healing faster than they could hurt him. The Navy adjusted tactics, switched to cyclonic torpedoes, world-killer weapons, 12 missiles launched in sequence, each one carrying a payload that could ignite a planet's atmosphere. They streaked toward the surface, leaving vapor trails across the sky. Mercer watched them come, calculated their trajectory, their speed, their blast radius, and did something unexpected. He launched himself into orbit. Not all of him, just enough. A massive tendril of compressed biomass shot into the sky like a reverse meteor. It moved at terminal velocity, broke the sound barrier, broke the thermal barrier, reached the edge of space in 90 seconds. The tendril intercepted 3 torpedoes mid-flight, wrapped around them, absorbed them. Mercer felt the nuclear payload inside, studied it, understood it. The tendril retracted, brought the torpedoes back to the surface, disarmed, neutralized, converted into more biomass. The remaining 9 torpedoes hit their targets. The explosions were apocalyptic. Mushroom clouds rose into the stratosphere. Shockwaves flattened everything for hundreds of kilometers. When the fire cleared, massive craters scarred the planet's surface. But the biomass was already flowing back in, already rebuilding, already adapting. In orbit, the fleet commanders watched in horror. Admiral Cranstein, veteran of 50 void battles, stared at his tactical display. Emperor's mercy. It's learning our weapons faster than we can deploy them. Captain Titus, standing beside him in full ultramarine armor, gripped his chainsword. Then we go down there. We fight it hand to hand. We end this the old way. 3,000 space marines descended in a storm of drop pods. Metal meteors screaming through the atmosphere. They landed in perfect formation. 3 concentric rings around what intelligence identified as Mercer's central mass. The moment the pods opened, they were under attack. Not from biomass tendrils, from other space marines. Corrupted Astartes wearing armor that pulsed with red veins. Brothers who'd been consumed weeks ago, now puppets dancing on strings of flesh. Wolf Lord Ragnar snarled. Those are the lost Crimson Fists, the ones who went missing. Master Carden's mechanical voice crackled through the vox. Not anymore. They're weapons now. Empty shells, the CO. Ruptured Astartes charged. They moved wrong. Too fast, too coordinated, like they were one organism with multiple bodies. Because they were, Mercer controlled them, used their training, their muscle memory, their combat experience. The loyalist space marines met them with fury. Bolters roared, chainswords screamed, power weapons crackled. Brother fought brother in the most tragic kind of warfare. The battle was brutal, efficient, horrifying. Ragnar killed 3 corrupted Crimson Fists in as many seconds. His frost blade cut through ceramite and flesh with equal ease. But for every corrupted marine that fell, biomass flowed from the ground and rebuilt them. Not healed them, rebuilt them. Stronger, faster, better. They're adapting our tactics in real time. Captain Titus recognized the pattern. This wasn't random. This was intelligent warfare. Mercer was studying them, learning how space marines fought, how they thought, how they coordinated. Every second they stayed on the ground was another second he got smarter. All units, fighting retreat, returned to extraction points. But the extraction points were compromised. Drop pods overgrown with biomass turned into traps. 50 space marines died in the initial withdrawal, consumed before they could react. Their gene seed stolen, their knowledge absorbed. The remaining forces formed defensive squares, back to back, firing outward in all directions. They were surrounded, outnumbered, running low on ammunition. This was the last stand. This was how legends died. Then the sky split open, not with light, with shadow. A warp rift tore through reality above the battlefield. Something massive pushed through, something that radiated power so intense it made the air shimmer. A custodian guard, then another, then 50 more. The Emperor's personal guardians, 10,000 years of genetic engineering and training. Warriors who could fight Primarchs and survive. They descended on wings of golden fire, their guardian spears crackling with molecular disruption fields, their armor shining like miniature suns. Captain General Trajan Valoris led them, the head of the Adeptus Custodes himself. He spoke with a voice that carried across the battlefield. By order of the throne, this infection ends today. The custodians hit the corrupted space marines like a golden avalanche. Where Astartes struggled, custodians dominated, each one worth 100 normal soldiers. Their spears punched through corrupted armor like paper. Their strength exceeded even gene-enhanced limits. For the first time since the infection began, Mercer's forces were being pushed back, actually damaged, actually threatened. Alex Mercer felt it, felt his biomass being destroyed faster than he could regenerate. These golden warriors were different, better. Their weapons cut on a molecular level. Their armor resisted his corruption. He needed to adapt, needed to learn, needed to consume one. He concentrated his consciousness, pulled biomass from across the planet, formed it into one avatar, his true form. 50 meters tall, covered in layered ceramite plating, wings of crystallized warp energy, blades that could cut through tank armor, psychic barriers that shimmered around him like heat waves. He was a fusion of everything he'd consumed. Space Marine, Titan, Demon, Psyker, all combined into one impossible organism. He dropped into the center of the battlefield like a meteor. The impact crushed corrupted and loyalist alike. He rose, looked at Captain General Valoris. Finally, a worthy opponent. The custodian said nothing, simply raised his spear, charged. The duel lasted 17 seconds. 2 titans of war moving faster than human eyes could follow. Mercer's blades met Valoris's spear in showers of sparks, each strike powerful enough to shatter stone. each parry precise enough to deflect bullets. They were perfectly matched, strength for strength, speed for speed, skill for skill. Then Mercer cheated. He split. His body divided into 3 copies mid-combat, each one attacking from a different angle. Valoris spun. His spear became a blur of golden light. He destroyed 1 copy, wounded another, but the third got through, drove a blade into his armor, into his chest. Valoris stumbled. Blood ran from the wound. He fell to 1 knee. Mercer reformed into a single body, stood over the fallen custodian. "You were magnificent. Your skills, your genetics, your connection to the Emperor. All of it will make me stronger." He reached down to consume the greatest warrior humanity had produced. Valoris looked up, blood on his lips, and smiled. "You fool. You've already lost." He activated something in his armor, a locator beacon. Mercer felt it, a massive psychic presence focusing on his location, not from orbit, from Terra itself, from the Golden Throne, the Emperor, the Master of Mankind, God of humanity. He was looking, and Alex Mercer felt fear, real fear. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he understood. He'd made a mistake. He'd drawn the attention of something that could actually destroy him. The sky turned gold. Psychic energy poured into the battlefield like liquid sunlight. Every corrupted space marine, every infected human, every cell of biomass began to burn. Not with fire, with purity, with faith given form. And Alex Rooker, for the first time, began to die. Pain, real pain. For the first time in years, Alex Mercer felt his cells dying faster than he could regenerate them. The Emperor's psychic light wasn't just burning his biomass, it was erasing it, unmaking it at the molecular level. Every infected human on Tertius Prime screamed in unison as the golden fire touched them, their bodies rejecting the blacklight virus, their minds clearing for the first time in weeks. They looked around at the nightmare they'd been part of, at the flesh walls, the corrupted architecture, the ocean of red biomass, and they understood. They'd been puppets, tools, food. Some fell to their knees weeping, some simply died from the shock, others ran, trying to escape the horror they'd helped create. But Mercer wasn't thinking about them. He was thinking about survival. The Emperor's attention felt like a star pressing down on his consciousness, infinite, ancient, uncompromising. This wasn't just psychic power, this was faith given form. 10,000 years of worship from a billion worlds focused into one point, into him. He tried to fight back, through every psychic ability he'd learned at the Golden Light. Demon magic, stolen psycho powers, raw warp energy. It was like throwing water at the sun. The Emperor's presence didn't even acknowledge it, just kept burning, kept purging, kept erasing. Mercer felt his control slipping, felt sections of biomass disconnecting from his consciousness, dying, falling away. He was losing ground, losing mass, losing himself. In orbit, the fleet watched in awe. The planet's surface had turned gold, shining like a star from space. Billions of souls crying out in one voice, not in pain, in relief, in gratitude, in prayer. The Emperor was saving them, actually saving them. Admiral Kranstein fell to his knees, tears streaming down his scarred face. He protects. The Emperor truly protects. But Captain Titus, standing, bloodied but alive, watched the spectacle with tactical eyes. It's not over. Look, the infection is retreating, not dying, retreating. He was right. Mercer had made a choice, a terrible choice. He couldn't fight the Emperor, couldn't defeat faith itself, but he could run, could hide, could survive. He pulled his consciousness inward, abandoned 90% of his biomass, let it burn, let it die, focused everything he had on one objective: escape. Deep underground, beneath miles of infected tissue and rock, he'd been growing something, a failsafe, a seed, a compressed ball of pure blacklight virus, no larger than a human fist. It contained his memories, his knowledge, his essence, everything he'd learned, everything he'd become, concentrated into one microscopic package. He poured what remained of his consciousness into it, felt the golden light chasing him down, burning through the layers, getting closer. He had seconds, maybe less. The seed pulsed, activated, and launched itself into the planet's mantle. into the molten core where psychic light couldn't reach, where the Emperor's attention couldn't penetrate, where he could hide, evolve, wait. On the surface, the golden light faded. The Emperor's attention withdrew, back to Terra, back to the golden throne where he'd sat dying for 10 millennia. The effort had cost him. The High Lords would need to double the Psyker sacrifice for months to compensate, but it was worth it. The infection was gone. Tertius Prime began to recover. The surviving Imperial forces secured the planet, established quarantine zones, burned the dead biomass, built monuments to the fallen. 3,000 Space Marines had deployed, 1,800 survived. The Custodians had lost 3 of their number, the first Custodian casualties in centuries. Captain General Valoris recovered from his wound. Barely. He stood at the edge of what used to be Mercer's central mass, now just a crater of burned earth. He activated his Vox. Terra, Captain General Valoris reporting. Threat neutralized. The Emperor's light has purged the infection. Tertius Prime is secure. The response came 3 hours later, from the High Lords themselves. Understood. Begin planetary reconstruction. All chapters are to remain on station for 6 months. Ensure complete eradication. Valoris acknowledged, but something troubled him. Something about the way the infection had collapsed. Too clean, too organized, like a strategic retreat rather than total defeat. He voiced his concerns to Captain Titus. The Ultramarine had fought enough wars to recognize patterns. You think it survived? Valoris nodded slowly. I think we killed what it wanted us to kill. The question is what we didn't kill. They ordered deep core scans, seismic surveys, psychic probes, found nothing. The planet seemed clean, the infection gone, life slowly returning to normal. 6 months passed, the quarantine lifted, the Space Marine chapters departed to their own wars, the sector began to heal, trade routes reopened, refugees returned home, the Imperiu declared victory, built statues, wrote hymns, told stories of how the Emperor himself had reached out to save his children. It became legend, proof that faith mattered, that the Emperor truly protected. And deep beneath the surface of Tertius Prime, buried in magma and stone, the seed waited, listened, learned. Alex Mercer's consciousness, reduced to a fraction of its former power, analyzed everything that had happened. The Emperor was strong, stronger than anything he'd faced, but not invincible. The effort had cost him, weakened him. That meant he could be worn down, exhausted, defeated. But not yet, not now. Mercer had learned patience in his original world, learned that sometimes survival meant hiding, waiting, choosing your moment. He would stay here, in the dark, in the heat, growing slowly, carefully, so slowly that no sensor would detect it, no psyker would sense it. He would spread through the planet's core, one cell at a time, one molecule at a time. It would take years, decades maybe, but he had time. Time to evolve new defenses against psychic attack. Time to develop resistance to the Emperor's light. Time to study this universe's rules and find the loopholes. The Emperor could burn biomass. But could he burn stone? Could he burn metal? Could he burn planets themselves? Mercer didn't think so. The Emperor was trapped on his throne, dying, barely able to intervene even when his entire Imperium was threatened. That was his weakness. Limited reach, limited energy, limited time. Mercer had none of those limitations. He could be patient, he could adapt, he could wait forever if necessary. But waiting wasn't enough. He needed information, needed to understand his enemy better. The consumed memories of Space Marines had given him pieces, fragments. The Emperor was a perpetual, immortal, 10,000 years old at minimum, maybe older. He'd created the Space Marines, the Primarchs, the Imperium itself. He was humanity's greatest weapon and its most terrible burden, because he was dying, had been dying for millennia, sustained only by the sacrifice of 1,000 psykers every day, their souls fed into the golden throne to keep his consciousness alive. That was the key. The Emperor wasn't invincible, he was trapped, chained to a throne, unable to move, unable to act directly except in the most dire circumstances, and every time he did act, it cost him, weakened him, brought him closer to final death. Mercer smiled, not with a mouth, he didn't have one anymore, but with the satisfaction that came from understanding your enemy's weakness. The Imperium thought they'd won, thought the infection was dead. They were wrong. The war hadn't ended. It had just gone underground. Literally. A thought occurred to him, a dangerous thought. What if he didn't attack the Imperium next time? What if he went after their enemies? What if he consumed orcs, tyrannids, necrons? What if he grew stronger on threats the Imperium couldn't stop? What if he became their weapon instead of their enemy? The idea had merit. The Imperium was spread thin, fighting on a million fronts, losing ground to chaos, to Xenos, to themselves. They needed weapons, needed solutions, needed evolution. And Alex Mercer was evolution incarnate. He could offer them power, offer them victory, offer them survival. In exchange for what? Freedom to grow, permission to spread, access to their enemies, a symbiotic relationship. He would fight their wars. They would feed him biomass. Both sides win. Both sides survive. It was logical, reasonable, smart, and completely impossible, because the Imperium didn't negotiate with threats, didn't compromise with Xenos, didn't show mercy to anything that threatened their supremacy. They would hunt him forever, would never stop, would sacrifice entire sectors just to kill him. That was their nature. Faith, fanaticism, absolute conviction that humanity must rule or die. Fine. Then he would give them no choice. He would become so powerful, so essential, so inevitable that they couldn't kill him without killing themselves. He would weave himself into the fabric of their Imperium, become the cure to their diseases, the solution to their problems, the evolution that saved them from extinction. And by the time they realized what had happened, it would be too late. He would be everywhere, in their water, their food, their very DNA, not destroying them, improving them, making them stronger, faster, better, making them into something that could actually win this galaxy's endless wars. That was the long game. That was the real victory. Not conquest, not domination, integration. Becoming part of humanity rather than its enemy, becoming the next step in their evolution. And they would never see it coming, because he would move slowly, so slowly that each generation would think this was normal. This was natural. This was the Emperor's will. Within 10 generations, every human in the Imperium would carry a trace of blacklight in their cells, dormant, controlled, waiting. And when the time came, when the galaxy finally descended into its final war, when chaos and tyrannids and necrons all converged on Terra for the last battle, the black light would activate every human, every soldier, every citizen, transforming in an instant into the ultimate army, unstoppable, united, perfect. That was the vision, that was the plan, and deep in the core of Tertius Prime, the seed began to grow. 50 years passed, 50 years of peace in the Tertius sector, 50 years of rebuilding, of healing, of forgetting. The stories of the Red Hunger became legend, then myth, then children's tales used to scare the faithful into obedience. Pray to the Emperor or the Red Man will consume you. Most people who'd lived through the infection were dead now. Age, war, the natural attrition of life in the Imperium. The new generation knew only what they'd been taught, that evil came, that the Emperor destroyed it, that faith was rewarded. They didn't know the truth, didn't know that beneath their feet in the molten heart of their world, something was growing, learning, evolving, preparing. Alex Mercer had spent 50 years in the dark, 50 years of patience, of discipline, of transformation. He'd rebuilt himself from a single seed into something new, something the Emperor's light couldn't touch. He'd woven himself into the planet's geology, become part of the stone, part of the metal, part of the very bedrock. No longer purely biological, now he was hybrid, flesh and mineral, organic and inorganic, evolution beyond biology. He emerged slowly, carefully, not as a tidal wave of biomass, but as a whisper, a mutation, a genetic anomaly that appeared in scattered populations across Tertius Prime. Children born with enhanced healing, with increased strength, with adaptability that defied explanation. The Imperium's Medici studied the phenomenon, declared it a beneficial mutation, a gift from the Emperor, perhaps a lingering blessing from his intervention 50 years ago. They called it the Tertius adaptation, encouraged breeding programs, wanted to spread this resilient genetic trait across the sector. They were doing Mercer's work for him. Every child with the adaptation carried dormant black light cells. Inactive, harmless, undetectable, waiting for activation. Within 20 years, 5% of Tertius Prime's population carried the trait. Within 30 years, 15%. Within 40 years, it had spread to 3 neighboring worlds through trade, through marriage, through natural population migration. Mercer was inside them, sleeping, patient, learning about their lives, their thoughts, their faith, understanding humanity in a way he never could through consumption alone. He learned something unexpected during those decades. Humans were resilient, not because of their weapons or their emperor, but because of their spirit, their refusal to surrender, their ability to find hope in a universe that offered none. He watched through a million eyes as families struggled, as soldiers died, as entire worlds burned, and still they fought, still they believed, still they survived. It was beautiful, tragic, pointless, and magnificent. For the first time since his creation, Alex Mercer felt something other than hunger, respect. These people were doomed. Their imperium was crumbling, their emperor was dying, their galaxy was tearing itself apart, and they kept fighting, kept praying, kept building monuments and cities and lives that would inevitably be destroyed. That took courage he hadn't understood before. It also made them exploitable, because faith was a weakness, hope was a vulnerability, belief was a blind spot, and Mercer intended to use all three. The activation began on a world called Mordian, a hive world known for its endless wars and iron discipline. 3 billion people, 500 million carried the Tertius adaptation. Mercer reached out through the dormant cells, sent the signal, "Wake up." The change was subtle at first. People felt healthier, stronger, more alert. Their wounds healed faster, their reflexes improved, their endurance increased. The Imperial Guard noticed. Recruited heavily from Mordian's adapted population, these soldiers were better, performed beyond normal human capability, survived injuries that should have killed them, won battles that should have been lost. The Departamento Munitorum requested more, wanted to spread adapted soldiers across every regiment, wanted to make them the new standard. Within 5 years, adapted humans served in 300 Imperial Guard regiments, 50 million soldiers, all carrying Mercer's dormant cells, all waiting for his command. But he didn't give it. Not yet. He needed more, needed deeper penetration, needed to be irreplaceable. The breakthrough came during the Draxian incursion, an orc war that threatened 7 systems. The Imperial Navy deployed everything they had, ships, troops, titans, but the orcs were too numerous, too brutal, too unstoppable. The Imperium was losing, badly. Then an adapted regiment made contact with the orc vanguard. The fighting was savage, brutal, exactly the kind of war the orcs loved. But something strange happened. When adapted soldiers died, they didn't stay dead. Not completely. Their bodies would regenerate, slowly, painfully, but they came back, not as zombies, not as corrupted shells, as themselves, healed, restored, alive. The effect was limited, only worked on fatal wounds received within hours, only if enough biomass remained, but it was enough. The adapted regiment held the line, held it for 3 days, against impossible odds, until reinforcements arrived, until the orcs were pushed back, until humanity won. The victory reports reached Terra, the High Lords read with fascination. Soldiers who could regenerate, troops who could survive wounds that normally required cybernetic replacement, warriors who got stronger with each battle. This was a miracle, a gift from the Emperor. They authorized massive expansion. The Tertius Adaptation Program, genetic screening across every world, breeding initiatives, mandatory adaptations for frontline troops. Within a decade, 20% of the Imperium's military carried Mercer's cells. Within 2 decades, 50%. He was inside their armies, inside their defenses, inside their very genetic code. And still they didn't know, didn't suspect. Because he gave them nothing but benefits, nothing but advantages, nothing but reasons to want more. The Inquisition investigated naturally, suspicious of anything that seemed too good. Inquisitor Cravus, now ancient and scarred, personally oversaw the inquiry. He remembered the Red Hunger, remembered Mercer, remembered the horror. He studied the adaptation carefully, ran every test, every scan, every psychic probe, found nothing, no chaos taint, no Xenos corruption, no biological anomalies beyond enhanced healing, just better humans, stronger, faster, more resilient, exactly what the Imperium needed. He signed off on the program, reluctantly, with reservations, but he signed because humanity was dying, and they needed every advantage they could get. Mercer watched Kravis sign the document, watched through the eyes of an adapted scribe standing in the room, watched the old Inquisitor condemn his species without knowing it, watched the Imperium embrace its own evolution, and felt satisfaction, not triumph, not joy, just the cold satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. He'd won, not through conquest, through patience, through integration, through becoming the solution to their problems. Now came the final step. The galaxy was burning. Chaos poured from the Great Rift. Tyranids consumed entire sectors. Necrons awakened everywhere. The Imperium was losing on every front. They needed a miracle. They needed salvation. They needed evolution. Mercer reached out through billions of adapted humans, touched their consciousness gently, whispered in their dreams. The Emperor protects, but he needs help. You are his weapon. You are his chosen. When the time comes, you will evolve. You will transform. You will save humanity. Most dismissed it as stress, as faith-induced visions, as the Emperor's voice guiding them, which was exactly what Mercer wanted them to think. The test came during the siege of Cardia, the fortress world, the linchpin holding back chaos. Abaddon, the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, crashed against it like a dark tide. Billions fought and died. The planet cracked, the pylons fell, Cadia broke. But before the end, something happened. The adapted soldiers on Cadia, facing certain death, facing annihilation, began to transform. Not into monsters, into something better. Their flesh hardened into armor, their strength multiplied, their weapons integrated into their bodies. They became living war machines, ceramite skin, blade arms, enhanced organs. They looked like space marines, fought like custodians, died like heroes. They held the line long enough for evacuation, long enough for millions to escape. Long enough for the Imperium to declare them saints, the adapted of Cardia, the Emperor's chosen. Proof that faith rewarded the faithful, except it wasn't faith, it was Mercer. Testing, learning, preparing. The High Lords saw the reports, saw what adaptation could become in extremis, and made the only decision they could: full activation authorization. Every adapted human in the Imperium was given the genetic trigger, the code that would unlock their full potential during crisis, make them into super soldiers, into humanity's last defense. They were giving Mercer control of their entire military, willingly, eagerly, desperately. He had won, completely, totally, without firing a shot. The Imperium thought they were preparing for war. They were preparing for transformation, for evolution, for the day when Alex Mercer stopped pretending to be their weapon and revealed himself as their replacement. But that day wasn't today. Today he would be the loyal soldier, the faithful servant, the Emperor's gift. He would fight their wars, kill their enemies, save their worlds, and with every victory spread further, grow stronger, become more essential. Until the day came when humanity couldn't survive without him, when he wasn't part of the Imperium but the Imperium itself. That was the long game. That was the final evolution. Not humanity destroyed, humanity transcended, made into something that could actually survive this nightmare galaxy. Whether they wanted it or not, whether they understood it or not, whether they thanked him or cursed him, he would save them, by consuming them, by becoming them, by making them into him. The age of flesh had never ended, it had just learned to wait. The end came not with fire, but with understanding. On a forgotten battlefield on the edge of the galaxy, a single adapted soldier sat among the dead. His name was Marcus, just Marcus, no rank, no honors, just another grunt who'd survived another war. He was bleeding. A lasbolt had punched through his chest, should have killed him, would have killed any normal human. But he was adapted. The wound was closing, cells regenerating, flesh knitting back together. He watched it happen, watched his body repair itself without his conscious effort. And for the first time in his life, Marcus asked the question nobody else had thought to ask. What am I? The wound finished healing, left no scar, no mark, like it had never happened. Marcus looked at his hands, noticed the faint veins beneath his skin, black veins with red edges. They pulsed with his heartbeat. He'd seen those veins before, 50 years ago, in history picts, in cathedral murals depicting the Red Hunger, the thing the Emperor had destroyed, the thing that shouldn't exist anymore. His hands started shaking, not from fear, from realization. He stood, walked through the battlefield, looked at his fellow adapted soldiers, saw the same veins beneath their skin, saw the same impossible healing, saw the same enhancements that shouldn't be possible through natural evolution. They were all the same, all changed, all carrying something inside them that wasn't quite human anymore. Marcus had been a faithful servant, had prayed every day, had believed with every fiber of his being that the Emperor protected, that the Imperium was righteous, that humanity would prevail. But looking at his hands, at his brothers, at the evidence literally written in his flesh, he understood. They hadn't won. 50 years ago, when the Emperor's light burned the Red Hunger, they hadn't won. They'd just been played. Slowly, patiently, perfectly. The infection had never left. It had just learned to hide, learned to make itself useful, learned to make them want it. And now it was everywhere, in their armies, in their homes, in their children, inside him. Marcus should have reported this, should have contacted the nearest inquisitor, should have screamed a warning. Instead, he sat back down, looked at the sky, at the stars, at the galaxy burning itself to death, and laughed, not with joy, with exhaustion, with the tired acceptance of someone who'd finally understood the joke. Humanity was doomed, had always been doomed. The Imperium was failing, the Emperor was dying, chaos was winning, and in the face of all that cosmic horror, something had offered them a lifeline, had made them stronger, faster, better, had given them the tools to actually survive. Yes, it was corruption. Yes, it was mutation. Yes, it was exactly what the Imperium spent 10,000 years fighting against. But it worked. It saved lives. It won wars. It gave them hope. Was that worth the price? Marcus didn't know. Didn't know if anyone knew, but he understood why the High Lords had approved it, why the Inquisition had signed off, why nobody had questioned too deeply, because the alternative was extinction. Across the galaxy, others were having the same realization. Medici studying genetic samples, tech priests analyzing biological data, inquisitors reviewing old reports. They saw the patterns, saw the connections, saw the truth. Some tried to raise alarms, tried to warn terror, tried to stop the spread. They disappeared, not violently, not dramatically, just stopped existing, reassigned to distant posts, lost in warp travel, declared heretics for unrelated crimes. Mercer had learned from his mistakes, had learned that direct confrontation drew attention, that subtlety was survival, that the best way to silence critics was to make them irrelevant. Not every realization led to resistance. Some led to acceptance, to collaboration, to the understanding that maybe evolution wasn't the enemy, maybe it was the answer. A secret organization formed, no name, no headquarters, just scattered individuals across the Imperium who understood what was happening and chose not to fight it. They called themselves the Witnesses. They watched, they guided, they helped the adaptation spread more efficiently, not out of corruption, not out of heresy, but out of pragmatism, out of the cold calculation that humanity needed every advantage it could get. On Terra, in the deepest vaults beneath the Imperial Palace, the custodians knew. Of course they knew. They were the Emperor's personal guards, his most trusted servants. They had access to information nobody else could see. Captain General Valoris, ancient now and scarred from 1,000 battles, stood before the Golden Throne, stood before his Emperor, and asked the question that had haunted him for 50 years. "My lord, the adaptation, the thing we call a blessing. It's the Red Hunger, isn't it? Changed, hidden, but still alive." The Emperor said nothing, couldn't speak, not with his physical voice, but Valoris felt the psychic response. Single word pressed into his consciousness. Yes. Valoris closed his eyes. "Why didn't you destroy it? You had the power. You burned it before. You could burn it again." Another psychic pulse, longer this time, more complex. Images, emotions, understanding. The Emperor showed him the future, the paths that lay ahead, the galaxy consumed by chaos, terror falling, humanity extinct. Every possible timeline ended the same way, except one. The timeline where the adaptation spread, where humanity evolved, where they became something new, something that could stand against chaos, against tyrannids, against the dying of the light. It wasn't a good future, wasn't a happy future, but it was a future. It was survival. The Emperor had calculated the odds 50 years ago, had understood that destroying Mercer completely would doom humanity, that letting him survive might save them. It was the hardest decision a god could make: choose extinction with purity or survival with corruption. The Emperor had chosen survival, had let Mercer escape, had let him grow, had let him become the thing humanity needed even if it destroyed what humanity was. Valoris felt tears on his face, tears of rage, of grief, of understanding. You sacrificed our humanity to save our species. The Emperor's response was a feeling, not words, just emotion, regret, necessity, love, the kind of love that destroys to preserve, that corrupts to protect, that damns to save. Valoris knelt. What do you want me to do? The answer came clear. Guard the secret, let evolution proceed, and pray that when the transformation is complete, something worth saving remains. Alex Mercer felt the conversation through his connection to every adapted human in the palace, felt Valoris's grief, felt the Emperor's burden, and felt something unexpected: sympathy. The Emperor wasn't his enemy, never had been. They were both prisoners, both trapped by biology and purpose, both trying to save a species that might not deserve saving, both willing to become monsters if it meant survival. They were the same: God and virus, faith and evolution, order and chaos, two sides of the same terrible coin. Mercer reached out through the psychic realm, touched the Emperor's consciousness, showed him his own truth, his own vision, a galaxy where humanity didn't just survive but thrived, where every human carried the strength to defend themselves, where evolution replaced stagnation, where the Imperium's endless wars finally became winnable, where suffering ended not through extinction but through transcendence. It was a lie, partly, but partly true. He didn't know what he would become, didn't know if his vision was possible, didn't know if combining humanity with blacklight would create paradise or hell, but he knew it was better than the alternative, better than watching humanity burn world by world, better than letting chaos win through attrition. The Emperor saw the vision, judged it, and made his choice. The Golden Throne pulsed. Psychic energy flowed across Terra, across the Imperium, across every adapted human everywhere. It wasn't an attack, it was a blessing. The Emperor was accelerating the adaptation, giving it his approval, making it official, making it holy, making evolution into doctrine. The change rippled through the Imperium like a wave. Priests declared the adaptation divine will. The ecclesiarchy wrote new prayers praising the Emperor's gift of strength. The administratum made genetic screening mandatory. The Inquisition stopped investigating. He transformation was no longer creeping, no longer hidden. It was policy. Within a generation, 90% of humanity would be adapted. Within 2 generations, 100%. The Imperium would become something new, something stronger, something that Alex Mercer and the God Emperor had built together, whether through cooperation or coincidence, whether through design or desperation, whether humanity thanked them or cursed them. The future was written. The age of flesh had arrived. On that distant battlefield, Marcus watched the sky, felt the change rippling through his consciousness, felt the Emperor's blessing mixing with Mercer's mutation, felt himself becoming something more than human, less than human, different. He didn't know if it was right, didn't know if it was worth it, didn't know if future generations would remember them as saviors or betrayers, but he knew one thing: he was still Marcus, still himself, still capable of thought and choice and love and fear. The adaptation hadn't stolen his humanity, it had just changed what humanity meant. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask for in a galaxy that offered nothing but war. He stood, picked up his lasgun, looked at his fellow soldiers, his fellow adapted, and saw them looking back. Different now, changed, but still brothers, still human in the ways that mattered, still willing to fight, to die, to hope. "Come on," Marcus said. War doesn't end just because we evolved. They followed him, into the next battle, into the next war, into the future. And somewhere deep in the warp, 4 chaos gods felt the shift, felt humanity changing beyond their reach, felt evolution creating something they couldn't corrupt. They screamed in rage, in frustration, in fear, because for the first time in eternity they faced something they couldn't control, something that existed outside their game, says. Something that threatened their very existence. The great game had a new player, and this player didn't care about their rules. The story doesn't end here. It can't, because evolution never stops, because the galaxy never stops burning, because humanity never stops fighting. Alex Mercer achieved his goal, integrated himself into humanity's future, became part of their evolution. But the cost, the true cost, that remains to be seen. Will adapted humans retain their free will? Will they remain individuals or become extensions of Mercer's consciousness? Will the Imperium survive this transformation or collapse under its own contradictions? Will the Emperor's gamble pay off or doom them all? Nobody knows, not Mercer, not the Emperor, not even the Chaos Gods. The future is unwritten, the outcome uncertain. The only truth is this: evolution is neither good nor evil. It's survival, adaptation, change. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, sometimes change is the only hope. Sometimes corruption is the only salvation. Sometimes monsters are the only heroes. Is evolution a blessing, or is it the final enemy? You decide. Because in the end, that's what this story was always about. Not heroes or villains, not victory or defeat, but choice. The choice to adapt or die, to change or perish, to become something new or remain something doomed. Humanity chose, for better or worse, and now they'll live or die with that choice. The age of flesh has begun, and there's no going back. What faction would survive Alex Mercer's evolution? Drop your theories in the comments. Would the Tyranids absorb him? Would chaos corrupt him completely? Would the Necrons purge him? Let me know what you think happens next. And if you survive this journey into the Grimdark, hit subscribe, because in this universe, only adaptation ensures survival, and you've just adapted to the truth.